A textbook case of ethnic cleansing, says the UN's top human rights official. Nearly 400,000 Rohingyas have fled Burma in the past fortnight for neighbouring Bangladesh after skirmishes between local militants and authorities that triggered a fierce backlash. We're going to be asking about the latest mass exodus of this Muslim minority considered as foreigners, even though the Rohingyas have been living in Burma for centuries. The crisis has also signaled the fall of an icon, if you will, with fellow Nobel Peace laureates condemning Aung San Suu Kyi's failure to publicly express empathy for the Rohingyas, instead siding with the former ruling junta in denouncing what she calls a campaign of misinformation. Should we take her statements at face value? The plight of the Rohingyas has stirred indignation across the Muslim world, with Islamists staging anti-Burma rallies in places like Indonesia, and Turkey's First Lady dispatched to Bangladesh to support relief efforts. So, what should the wider international community be doing? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Burma and the Rohingyas. With us, former French ambassador to both Burma and Bangladesh, Jean-Michel Lacombe, teaches at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for calling me.
Thanks as well for joining us from Frankfurt, Germany, Rohingya activist and blogger Nay San Luin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
And from Bangkok, Phil Robertson, Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch's Asia Division. Thanks for staying up late to be with us.
Of course, of course.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and on Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Let's start with the latest. Aung San Suu Kyi announcing she won't be attending the annual opening of the UN General Assembly in New York next week. This as the Security Council convened behind closed doors to discuss Burma, and the number of those fleeing topped, according to the world body's refugee agency, 370,000. Delano de Souza has more.
This body of water separates Burma from Bangladesh. 300 kilometers up ahead lies the Burmese border. Here, fresh arrivals keep pouring in. What's happening there?
They're burning our house.
On this side lies Bangladesh, and people hide on the river banks. They're waiting for their loved ones who haven't yet left. When border guards aren't in sight, they get the signal.
Come, come, it's clear. Come through here.
In the distance, a dozen new arrivals. Boats are filled with entire families, including children and the elderly, many with fear on their faces.
Just before we left, they fired at people. They burned everything.
Was the journey difficult?
Yes, they fired at those walking. We ran and we hid.
These are Rohingya refugees, Muslims who've lived in the northwest of Burma. According to the United Nations, they are among the most persecuted people in the world. Amateur pictures filmed by the Rohingyas purport to show what's going on in their villages. Journalists don't have access to this part of the country, where the Burmese army are accused of burning thousands of homes. Authorities say they are defending themselves against ARSA, a group of Rohingya rebels who attacked a police post. The exodus of Rohingyas refuses to cease. Heavy rains make the journey more cumbersome. On their backs, those that are able carry everything they own. The elderly are transported by whatever means are necessary.
We were very scared. We are now looking for peace.
This is the first village in Bangladesh where Rohingyas arrive. Here, no one is waiting for them. 370,000 Rohingya refugees have arrived in 2 weeks, and they have no shelter nor potable water. They make do on the side of the streets. This family have just arrived after walking for 7 days. They carried their injured son on their backs after he was shot by the Burmese army.
Many people died before us. We could only save him. They died one after the other.
The Rohingya are persecuted on religious grounds in Burma. The country is 90% Buddhist, and Muslim Rohingyas are seen as the enemy with no legal status.
They are the least Buddhist. They kill people. One catches you, the other will slit your throat. They don't want to see us in their country. They say it's not our home. Their objective is to kill us. They want to kill all of us.
In the midst of the mayhem, life continues. Little by little, entire makeshift villages made only with bamboo and plastic sheets are springing up. Residents from surrounding areas also come by to express their solidarity. They offer clothes, but the new comforts are unlikely to make the trauma go away.
This has all happened, Jean-Michel Lacombe, in the space of the last 2 weeks, these people fleeing.
Well, yes, it's not the first time, unfortunately. And this population moving to and fro between the two countries, this has been going on for 40 years.
It's been going on for 40 years.
Yes.
Ne San Luin, have you news of people who are perhaps still inside Rakhine State?
Yes, I know many people there, as I am leading a network of local activists there. I have an update in every minute. Today, the situation is there are many thousand people trapped in at the beach, which called Nakhondia, or just 40 minutes by boat from the Bangladesh border. They are stranding there for more than a week. There are many thousand children and the elderly people, women are also there. They cannot make the journey to Bangladesh because they have no money. They need at least 3,000 to 4,000 Bangladesh taka to make a journey to Bangladesh because the boats are not free. Since the morning, I am campaigning for these people, to get the rescue from there, but no one is ready to help them. So today I spoke with one person who made the journey to Bangladesh, who is already in Teknaf. He told me he doesn't know exactly how many people have been died there in starving. So this situation in other places as well. There are many thousand people trapped inside the mountain. There are also in other 3 places, they are just waiting for the boat, but as they don't have the money, they cannot flee. And
so whose job is it? Whose job is it then to come and rescue them? The ones that are waiting to come across to Bangladesh.
There are some boats, but they need the money. But as they don't have the money, they are just calling me and the other people who are in Arbro or working for the Rohingya issue. They are asking to help them. So I have talked with the Bangladesh authority who I know and asked them to help to rescue them, but they refuse because this is inside the Burmese territory. They cannot send the boat. And also there are some NGO, they are also trying, but as they need the money, this became the big issue, like in the part of other wall, if someone get trouble, people are sending the helicopter to refuse, but there is no one to send the wooden boat to rescue them. In northern Rakhine State, in Maungdaw and Butidong Township, there are still a lot of people are remaining, but they cannot go to the market. They cannot shop. So the food are running, and they are going to starve soon. The situation is really like, the Burmese government is going to kill the many thousand people in starving. And also in Sitwe refugee camp, the UN and the WFP stopped the ration, so they have no food. They cannot go to the market. Since August 25, at least 4,000 people have been indiscriminately killed. They were shot dead. Some were slaughtered. Some were beheaded. Even the small baby were beheaded. I have listened many stories from the different people who lost their loved one. Some people were burned alive. I have got some footage from them. So this should be stopped by the international community immediately.
Phil Robertson, what are you hearing from what's going on inside with a lot of the aid organizations who've been forced out since August the 25th. What are you hearing in terms of how many people have been killed? How many people still want to be rescued?
Well, the situation is very grim. We now have about 50 different villages that have been burned down. We have satellite imagery of those. We're going to be bringing those out very soon. It's clear that most of northern Rakhine State's Rohingya settlements are on fire or have already been burnt down. This is clearly a case of ethnic cleansing. The Secretary General of the UN called it that today in his press conference. Somebody asked him, is this ethnic cleansing? And he says, well, one third of the population is people that's outside the country now. What else would you call it? And we have information about 5 different massacres, which we are busy investigating now to the best of our ability because we cannot get into those areas. Humanitarians have been blocked. Journalists have been blocked. But, our people who are able to access the refugees that are pouring across the border into Bangladesh, the burning is happening right at the border. The Rohingya villages, within eyesight of the Bangladesh side of the border are being burned. So, the whole area, the whole parts of northern Rakhine State are now under threat. I think that they're basically trying to establish facts on the ground that there will be nothing for the Rohingya who have fled the country to return to. And it's problematic. There has to be an violence there, and there has to be, there has to be an end to the violence there. There has to be some guarantees that people will be able to return in dignity and with protection of their rights. And there needs to be an investigation. There needs to be accountability for the Tatmadaw commanders who are involved in this. Without that, we're not going to get anywhere. Right now, Human Rights Watch is going to be calling for a global arms embargo against the selling of any sort of arms to the Burma military, the Tatmadaw. We want various different countries who have military-to-military programs with the Tatmadaw to suspend those. I don't care whether it's education about peacekeeping or disaster relief or what have you. Now is not the time to have anything to do with the Tatmadaw. There has to be pressure on that army to cease what it is doing.
Talk us through, Phil, for a second, the genesis of all this. There was this, we saw initial reports on the wires back 2 weeks ago that there was this militant group that had attacked several army and police posts. What have you been able to piece together as to why it's all come to a head?
Well, this group is the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. They were first appeared October in 2016, where they attacked several police posts, and that led to that initial bout of burnings and clearance operations by the Burma Army. This time around on the 25th of August, the day after the Kofi Annan Commission report was released, we saw them attack 30 different police posts and an army base. As far as we can tell, they're not heavily armed. Just the other day, there was a capture of 6 of these ARSA militants by the military, and they were caught with slingshots and swords. So it's unclear, actually, how potent this organization is. There are claims that they are attacking civilians in some cases, and of course, if that's the case, that has to be investigated and condemned. But at the end of the day, if they're attacking police posts, I know the government of Myanmar wants to call it a terrorist activity, but, there are insurgents all around the world who are doing the same thing. And it's interesting that only ARSA has been designated as a terrorist organization by the Burma government, even though there are many different insurgencies around the country. But only this one, the Muslim one, has been designated as a terrorist organization by the Burma central government.
Jean-Michel Lacombe, what's your reading as to why this is happening?
Well, this is totally new. Until I told you, it has been going on for ages. The government of Bangladesh and of Burma has been trying to push back the Rohingyas back to Bangladesh. But what is new is that they are sort of fighting back. Someone must have explained what to do or trained them, even if they have only a few weapons. They have a common border with a country Bangladesh, which has been radicalized and now is extremely Muslim militant.
Nay San Nguyen, where did those militants get their weapons?
Last year, October 2016, they have attacked the 3 Boragat outposts in northern Maldor Township and Ratirang Township. From there, they have got some weapon, and with those, on August 25, they have attacked the 30 different Boragat police outposts. But most of their ASA member are holding the sword, knife, and the machete and the farmer tool. So they may have a few weapons, as Burmese government claim. Last year they have lost about 50 guns. Maybe they have all those and they have nothing at all. So there are the accusation from the ICG and Burmese government that they are connected with the foreign terrorist group. But ASA has been releasing several statements on Twitter that they have no connection with any foreign terrorist group. It is clear that also their member are holding the farmer tool, knife, and the machete and the sword. So we can see clearly that they have no connection with the foreign group. If they have any connection with the foreign group, they may have the modernized weapon.
All right, when we come back, we're going to see how it's all playing out with the international community. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're speaking on the day where the UN Secretary General has accused authorities in Burma of ethnic cleansing. This as the number of Rohingya Muslims fleeing to neighbouring Bangladesh has topped 370,000. We're talking about it in the company of France's former ambassador to both Burma and Bangladesh, Jean-Michel Lacombe, who teaches at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to Nay San Nguyen, Rohingya activist and blogger, who joins us from Frankfurt, and in the Thai capital, Bangkok, Phil Robertson, who is the Deputy Director of the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. On Tuesday, Bangladesh called for a safe haven zone and for Burma to make provisions for taking back those who fled.
Our country is already overburdened with a huge population, and providing space for Rohingyas is very difficult. However, on humanitarian grounds, we are giving shelter to these people fleeing violence. We will continue providing this shelter, but I urge the international community to put more pressure on Burma so that they take their people back in. The Burmese government does not have any right to deny the citizenship of these people. Rohingyas are citizens of Burma. It is Burma who has to take them back and ensure their safety.
Rohingyas are citizens of Burma. The problem, those in power in Burma consider the Rohingyas as foreigners, even when they've lived there for centuries. This is NLD spokesperson Nhan Win flatly telling The Guardian they are not Myanmar citizens. I think everyone knows the Bengali. There are no facial features like Bengalis in our Myanmar. Nowhere in the country. Your reaction to what we heard, both from Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and that statement for the spokesperson for Aung San Suu Kyi's party, Ambassador?
Well, quite clearly, the army has decided to get rid of the Rohingyas by an ethnic cleansing. And they have tried, their position is quite simple, because after all, they are responsible of security in the country. And unfortunately, Aung San Suu Kyi can do very little about it. Their position is that Burma is a fragile country. Every country which has a common border with Burma has an ethnic minority inside Burma. And therefore, we must get rid of as many foreigners as we can. And their position also is we have no lesson to learn from Bangladesh, who treated mercilessly the Buddhists who were living in Bangladesh after the independence. So it's about time the international community reacts quite quickly, because I think the army thinks that it is the unity of the country. And 40 years ago, when they barged in and took power, their excuse, sort of, was to protect the unity of the country. And, well, this is a very difficult situation for Aung San Suu Kyi, because she has very little leverage on security, the army, and the Rohingya have always been administered by a special administration, which is run by the army.
Nay Nguyen, simple question. Do you consider yourself Burmese?
Yes, I am Burmese. I speak fluent Burmese, and I study. I was born in northern Rakhine State, but I was raised in former capital Rangoon. I was graduated from Rangoon University. I consider myself Burmese because we belong to Burma, and particularly we belong to Arakan State. We existed in Arakan State before the Burmese invasion. We have the long history with the primary source evidence. Like in 1979, Dr. Francis Buchanan has published the spoken language in Burma Empire. The Rohingya language also included there. So we existed there before, since Burma was colonized by the British. So, and also after the independence of Burma from British in 1948, we were recognized as one of the official ethnic group of Burma, and we enjoy the equal right and the full citizenship. My grandfather of my mother, when he applied for the citizenship, the minister responded him, he doesn't need to apply for the citizenship because he belonged to the one of the indigenous people of Burma. So we have the strong evidence that we belong to Burma. And in 1982, they have entered the new citizenship law, and we became the stateless. There were 144 ethnic groups. They removed nine ethnic groups from the list. Most of them, those 9 were mostly Muslim group. They only left one common ethnic group, just to show the world that they are not discriminating. And we had this citizenship card, but those were taken away in 1989. The government instructed us to apply for the new citizenship card. But in 1994, they have issued forcibly issued the temporary registration card, and we became like a foreigner. Then in 2015,
foreigners in your own land.
President thinks.
And this brings us to the topic of Aung San Suu Kyi. She has decided not to attend UN Week in New York. Instead, she'll be giving a speech next Tuesday on national television. Among her only public pronouncements, well, she told Turkey's president last week that, quote, terrorists were responsible for a campaign of misinformation. And there was another statement last week in the company of the visiting Indian Prime Minister.
We have to take care of our citizens. We have to take care of everybody who is in our country, whether or not they are our citizens. It is our duty, and we try our best. Of course, our resources are not as complete and adequate as we would like them to be, but still we try our best, and we want to make sure that everyone is entitled to the protection of the law.
Phil Robertson, there's that sentence, even when they're not our citizens. Aung San Suu Kyi clearly taking a side in this whole citizenship question.
Well, she should be fixing the 1982 Citizenship Act. You know, the idea that somehow citizenship has to be granted by belonging to a particular ethnic group is discriminatory, and it's also against international human rights law, and that law needs to be fixed. And that is one of the core recommendations of the Kofi Annan-led Rakhine Advisory Commission, which delivered its report to Aung San Suu Kyi the day before the violence broke out. That commission, which she appointed, essentially established a roadmap for a new way forward for Rakhine State, with Rohingya and Rakhine getting along and basically both being citizens and being treated equally. I think we've moved very far away from that now. And I think Aung San Suu Kyi is not going to New York because she's not prepared to answer hard questions about the Rohingya and what's happening. The ambassador is absolutely right that under the 2008 Constitution, she has very little control over the security forces. But at the same time, she seems to be too willingly swallowing this allegation that all these people are terrorists. She's actually levied claims that UN agency local staff and international NGO local staff may have terrorists or people on their staff who've helped terrorists, which has also now endangered humanitarians working in Rakhine State. So she's made some irresponsible statements, but that doesn't mean that she's the source of all the problems.
It doesn't mean she's the source of all the problems, but let me ask you on this, Phil. It doesn't mean she's the source of all the problems, but because we're left sort of reading the tea leaves. Is this the way she thinks, or is she simply beholden to the military on this one?
Look, I think that the situation is a mixed situation. One where, of course, she knows that the Rohingya cause is very unpopular in Burma. I think that she may have her own doubts about the Rohingya. And I think that the military has also left her very few options. I think that the real villains here are Min Aung Hlaing, the senior general who leads the military. And we have to focus on how to pressure him to get him to stop the violence. But at the same time, I think that people need to recognize that the Rohingya are not going anywhere. Ultimately, they are the responsibility of Burma. They were born in Burma. They've lived all their lives in Burma. They're stateless. And under the provisions of the UN Statelessness Convention, they should be taken care of by Burma. They should be protected. And in this, Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh, the Prime Minister is absolutely right in saying that these are Burma's citizens and they need to be taken back to Burma.
Now, when we talk about the fall of a human rights icon, many recall there have been several Hollywood movies that celebrate Aung San Suu Kyi's nonviolent struggle over decades against a dictatorship. Back in 2011, Luc Besson, the French filmmaker, made a film, The Lady, starring Michelle Yeoh. Ambassador Lacombe, when you were in post in Burma, it was 2003 to 2007. Aung San Suu Kyi, what was your perception of her then?
Well, she was under lock and key. We had contact through a third party who was allowed to see her, and we had permanent contact with her close advisors, who were called the uncles, former army officers. And it was quite clear. I had a long talk with one of them who told me, 20 years ago I was in charge of a battalion of the light infantry, and the problem of Rohingya in my district was solved forever. So even in the small group around Aung San Suu Kyi, there are people who favor the military solution. As far as she's concerned, she didn't go to the General Assembly because that would be international tribunal, and she knows very well, as a seasoned.
And many are bitterly disappointed. They're surprised. Are you surprised by the way she's handled herself these past 2 weeks?
She has always been considered as a tough cookie by my colleagues, and she could not have been resisted to the treatment she met with the army without a very strong personality. So I think that she doesn't want to antagonize the military because a lot of people who elected her will not follow her. And another point, antagonizing the military is a difficult problem.
Neisan Lin, Aung San Suu Kyi, what are your thoughts on her, and are you surprised by the way she's behaved the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I am very much surprised because when she came to Switzerland in 2012, she told to the reporter that she doesn't know the Rohingya. Actually, she knows the Rohingya very well. There were many Rohingya members in her party in 1988. My own uncle was one of the founder of the NLD branch in Budidong, so I know all the story. Even I was very young at that time. So when the NLD member card were issued in Northern Rakhine State and the Sitwe, the race and the ethnicity was mentioned as Rohingya, and her signature stamp was there. So today, all of these NLD members are denying. On the other hand, when she formed the committee representing People Parliament, there was also the Rohingya member. That member is still alive in Rangoon, who is leading the Democratic and Human Rights Party now. His name is Uchome. So she knows Rohingya very well, but for her popularity, she is now denying. And also, when she was in Brussels in May this year, she said this problem, this communal problem in Rakhine State since 18th century. So she knows that we are existing there since 18th century. Just a few days ago, when she talked with the media journalists in Naypyidaw, she said, this problem since before the pre-colonial time. So she recognized that we are existed there since before the pre-colonial time.
Since before that time.
Sorry?
Since before that time, I was just repeating, and now she's taking a stand as though she's changed her position, is what you're saying. Ambassador, you were going to add about this.
Well, what I want to say is that, in fact, she is hoping to have international assistance. And the position of the United States, of the big states in the Security Council, will be to help her, even China.
There was condemnation on Tuesday from the White House, but China stood by for the time being. The authorities in Burma.
China is very worried. They have all their oil is coming from the Gulf. That oil is going through the Malacca Strait and making a very long tour and so on. They have invested a lot of money to have a pipe from Sitwe to Yunnan, the old Mandalay line. And, Sitwe, it's bang on target. It's in the Rohingya area. If they have a difficult situation there, that investment would be lost. And
so they have a lot to lose.
They have a lot to lose.
Hence the fact that Security Council meeting in New York taking place behind closed doors. Let's look at some of the other reactions in the region. In Indonesia, where Islamists have staged anti-Burma protests, this Wednesday, President Joko Widodo overseeing the departure of a flight carrying humanitarian aid bound for the border between Burma and Bangladesh. He praised Burma's authorities for allowing that plane to fly to the area. Over in India, the Muslim minority staging protests in several places, like in Kolkata on Monday, where organizers called on their government to do more to pressure Burma. But there have also been in India anti-Rohingya protests staged by right-wing Hindu nationalists. Here in Delhi, a fringe Hindu group staging a protest demanding the deportation of the 40,000 Rohingya Muslim refugees living in India. Let me ask you, Phil Robertson, where you stand in Bangkok, Thailand. Do you feel that polarization in the region?
Well, I think that there is a sort of deepening divide line between Buddhism and Islam in some areas in the region. I don't want to overplay this because I think that there are a number of people on both sides that are trying to use the Rohingya for political purposes. I mean, a lot of those people, for instance, protesting out in front of the embassy in Jakarta are FPE militants. These are the people who have also been attacking Christians. They've been attacking Ahmadis. They've been attacking Buddhists. They're trying to, create an Islamic State within Indonesia. And Rohingya is a perfect recruiting tool. I think that unfortunately a lot of these jihadis that are speaking up around the world, are more about recruiting people to join them than to really do anything to help the Rohingya. And the reality is that on the other side, the government of Burma is, playing up these jihadi links, even though there's not much evidence to back them up that has been found so far, because they want to emphasize that the Rohingya are external, they come from somewhere else, and they're linked with somewhere else, and that this is some sort of external invasion into the Buddhist Burmese heartland. And so, there's rhetoric being used with religious symbols on both sides, but the reality is that most of these people who are being driven out of northern Rakhine State, the Rohingya, yes, they're Muslim, but they're ordinary farmers. In many cases, they don't even have a mosque or anything in their village. I mean, they're following their local traditions and culture. Everybody else does. And, they're not connected to any larger global movement, but they're now victims facing a horrible situation in Bangladesh, which France and other countries around the world now need to step up and provide the maximum amount of humanitarian assistance to the UNHCR and the other UN agencies to ensure that at least these people who have reached Bangladesh have enough food to eat and medical services and some sort of tent to stay in.
Yeah, definitely a humanitarian emergency at the border there. I want to thank you, Phil Robertson, for joining us from Bangkok. I want to thank Nay-San Nguyen for being with us from Frankfurt, Jean-Michel Lacombe. Stay with us, though. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Haxi Myers-Belkin. This idea of a fall from grace for what had been a human rights icon, Aung San Suu Kyi. When you look around on the internet and look at media today, you get the sense of that?
Oh, absolutely. So while today's news coverage has been mainly focused on Aung San Suu Kyi's decision not to attend, of course, the UN General Assembly to discuss the unfolding crisis, certain elements of the news media are grappling with that larger question. How has the Nobel Peace Prize winner fallen so far from grace? Now, I found a piece in the Christian Science Monitor that's been shared widely on social media. It points out that during her years of house arrest, Aung San Suu Kyi's fight was sustained by independent media reporting, especially in the West. But now we read she's turning to state media outlets in very much the same way that the country's military junta did. So the Rohingya are terrorists, aid groups are supporting terrorism, and let's not forget her claim of an iceberg of misinformation promoting sympathy for the terrorists' cause in the global coverage of the crisis. Now, she was, of course, referring there to the claims, the widespread claims of ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya. But fake news is playing a significant role in the way this humanitarian disaster is being depicted on both sides. Now, French paper Le Monde has a project called Les Décodeurs. It's essentially a quest to debunk misinformation in the news. Today, they're focusing on the real provenance of some of the images that have been used to accuse Burma of atrocities. Now, these images, specifically the ones you see there, came to people's attention when they were tweeted by the Turkish Deputy Prime Minister alongside a message urging the international community to act to protect Rohingyas. Now, the first image you see there showing a number of bloated corpses, it's a very gory image indeed, has in fact been found to have been taken last year. It's been in circulation for over a year. And many people are in fact suggesting this image depicts victims of a boat accident in Burma. Another picture, part of this same series retweeted by the Turkish Deputy Prime Minister, actually shows people in Pakistan a number of years ago heading into a river to cool off during a heat wave, and not streams of Rohingya Muslims fleeing into Bangladesh. Now, needless to say, Francois, this battle of misinformation is on both sides. Now, this is a picture that was shared widely by supporters of the Burmese government, supposedly showing Rohingya terrorists training in the country. It was actually taken in Bangladesh in 1971.
1971.
1971. So the people disseminating these false images aren't going particularly, they're not trying particularly hard to choose even vaguely recent images, as you can see there. Now, returning for a moment to Aung San Suu Kyi's refusal to attend the UN General Assembly, this piece in the Times talks of a decision that will encourage criticism that she is hiding from angry condemnation of many of her former admirers. And that condemnation really is growing by the day. Ella Gandhi, who is the granddaughter of Gandhi and, of course, a former South African MP, she's the latest peace activist to write an open letter to Suu Kyi. She urges the de facto leader of Burma to use her power and influence to ensure that the government of Myanmar, that's what she calls it, we call it Burma here at France 24, engages with the people of Rakhine State in a humane and compassionate manner. Now, it's worth taking note that Suu Kyi is a recipient of the International Mahatma Gandhi Award for Reconciliation and Peace, so you would think that that open letter might carry some clout. Now, of course, the other prize that Suu Kyi is in possession of is the Nobel Peace Prize. Al Jazeera has republished a piece by a professor at Columbia University that argues that Suu Kyi's must be the single most embarrassing name on the roster of Nobel Peace Prize recipients. He says that it's high time for the committee to publicly rescind the prize from a person, I'm quoting here, so blatantly associated with genocide. And there is, of course, a very fast-growing petition at change.org demanding just that. The petition now has almost 420,000 signatures. But not everyone's going to be jumping at the chance to sign that. This piece in Pakistani daily Dawn argues that China's recent pronouncement in support of Burma's military crackdown is a direct result of China's trade and infrastructure strategy for Southeast Asia.
Yeah, what Ambassador Lacombe was arguing.
Sorry.
What Ambassador Lacombe was arguing a moment ago. We're going to have to leave it there. But I want to thank you, Haxi Myers-Belkin. I want to thank our panel once again for joining us here in the France 24 debate.